Hello! Welcome to Big Anime Talkies. I'm your host, Jason Hon, and on this episode, we are going to be talking about some pretty exciting manga chapters, some that annoyed me a little bit. We'll get into it. But this episode is going to be focusing on Boruto, 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 14, Jujutsu Kaisen, 269 and 270, and also One Piece 1127. A lot of really exciting things to talk about. As I said, I am Jason Hahn, writer for Screen Rants, content creator, luxurious podcast host, and I have some awesome guests with me today who are going to be chiming in a little bit with some of the biggest news stories we're going to talk about before we get into serious discussions where their knowledge and expertise will flourish. But I'll go ahead and introduce them. So then, whenever they feel the need to chime in, that doesn't sound like this is a haunted podcast, which honestly sounds like a cool idea. Let me know in the comments if we should try to figure out how to do a haunted podcast, maybe a Ouija board or something. I don't know. But today on this episode, we've got JR, who is a senior Screen Rant author. How are you today, man?
I'm doing well. I'm actually enjoying a lot of news related to each of the series we're going to be talking about today, and even just now, I'm in between, stories. So I'm excited to be discussing with y'all today.
Yeah, it's great to have you on again, man. Yeah, I was tempted to read the new Chainsaw Man this morning, and I haven't had time yet. And then I've got to get another One Piece thing written, but so we've got a lot to get to. But we've also got returning guest Joshua Fox, who's another Screen Rant writer who has written a lot for our manga section recently, but he's also pretty experienced in the Marvel and DC comic side of things. So it's always good to hear from him. How's your day going?
That's going pretty well. Just wrote up a big article that I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about later on the show. So is a show I'm pretty excited to be on. I mean, not that I'm never excited to be on here, but like this show specifically, I'm excited about.
Absolutely. A nice little tease there. I'm anxious to hear what you're working on. But yeah, as I said, on Big Anime Talkies, we usually like to discuss the newest, hippest things going on in the manga and anime series that we're really into. But first of all, we're going to talk about some of the biggest anime news that has come to light recently. First of all, we've talked about Jujutsu Kaisen quite a few times in this podcast and our previous podcast, Mega Manga Mondays. And as many people know, it is coming to an end quite soon. Chapter 271 officially releases this coming Sunday, and we'll definitely be talking about that and the series as a whole. A little bit of a tease and a bonus podcast hopefully coming out next week that will focus solely on that series and how well it wraps up. But news I'd like to talk about is some of the editors from Jujutsu Kaisen's manga have teased that more content could be in the works, or that fans should expect some more stuff to come out after the final chapter 271 happens. I don't know if that means we're going to be getting a Jujutsu Kaisen Shippuden sequel series. I think it'd be great if they teased like another movie or something like that. I recently wrote an update on everything we know about season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen because season 2 is so phenomenal. A lot of people are excited about it, and they have. I think it was last month they released that they're going to be releasing a new movie, quote unquote, that just recuts together the flashback arc between Gojo and Geto and Toji, which is a little disappointing to hear that it's going to be not even like, a bit of a new season that they're going to be teasing, kind of how Demon Slayer's been doing, but it's just re-edited episodes that we've already seen before. They're great episodes, and they're going to be really cool to see in a theater with other excited fans, but that's a little disappointing. Hopefully, the news of when the series ends and the editors, reveal what this additional content's going to be won't be quite as disappointing. Any thoughts or hopes on what that new content could be, gentlemen?
I mean, first and foremost, I know that there was a lot of hoopla around just a little bit of a tease of that story. But I got to keep in mind that whenever I see surprising announcements like that, it can pan out to be an art exhibit or something that's like exclusive, like out of this region. So as always, I don't want to jump the gun in terms of the nebulous possibilities regarding that. However, I know that the kind of world of JJK is still kind of in a precarious position, even just after the, without giving any spoilers, events that have been happening in the last few chapters, indicating there's a couple of directions it could take. But realistically, I mean, whose hands that'll, cross into, it's another matter entirely.
Absolutely, and yeah, we'll definitely be getting more into the chapter discussions on where we are hoping it could go from here. But I think that is incredibly well put because there's been so many other times where our hopes have been raised and then dashed. I'd say most recently with My Hero Academia, they were also teasing something after the series was going to end, and then it just turned out to be a popularity poll.
Exactly.
And that's wild. Whenever it gets close to a series with a series ending, they could just say, "Oh, there's something we're working on afterwards." It could be anywhere from a popularity poll to a whole sequel series, and there's a lot in between. So anxious to see what that will be. We'll definitely be talking about it next time around. Next bit of news. We've talked about. I've covered Dragon Ball Daima news almost every podcast. Very excited about it. Just it's Akira Toriyama's last work that he helped out with, and we know that the series is going to be premiering next month. I believe on the same day as Dragon Ball Sparking Zero's video game release. That's going to be a very exciting day for Dragon Ball fans. Hopefully, I can play the game a little bit earlier. I actually got to play the game in a preview event, and go ahead and read my coverage on Screen Rant if that tickles your fancy. But Daima had its dub trailer come out, and it teased that the English premiere will be in movie theaters. Unfortunately, fans need to wait almost a whole month to be able to see the English dub release. But the first 3 episodes are going to be available in theaters from November 10th to the 12th. And even though I think we're going to be getting weekly episode releases of Dragon Ball Daima, which is another exciting thing. Watching Dragon Ball Super weekly with the fan base was incredibly exciting and got a whole new generation into the franchise. And we'll see if Daima is able to do the same thing. They've been working on it for a very long time, so expectations are pretty high that it's going to be an animation smorgasbord of enjoyment. But it was great hearing some of the English voices. They got the voice actor who's done young Goku in the past to reprise her role, and hearing her do the young Goku Kamehameha at the end of the trailer, just it sent some shivers down my spine. It was incredibly exciting. What are some of your guys' thoughts on Daima? Did you guys watch the new trailer?
Yeah, definitely watched the trailer because I wrote up an article about it like 20 minutes ago. Yeah, I mean, we kind of similar thoughts as you. The animation is still looking great, and the English dub, man, it is just struck such a chord with me to hear Stephanie Nadolny back as Goku. Like I don't know why she didn't come back for Kai and all the other stuff that Dragon Ball has done the past decade, but it's just so great to finally have her back and with such a big project like this too. I'm obviously going to watch it in Japanese because I'm not waiting a month or however long I'll need to be able to watch it weekly in English. But I'm definitely going to be watching it simultaneously in English and Japanese now because and that is just so amazing that we get to hear her again.
Completely agree. I'm anxious to see what other voices kind of appear to. I'll be curious if they get like newer voice actors to play like the younger versions of characters, or are we going to have Christopher Sabat doing like a little Vegeta and a little Piccolo voice too?
Please.
Yeah, guy's so talented. I bet he could do it. So I mean, either way, I too will be watching both. It's just a little disappointing that they're not going to be releasing at the same time. You would think Dragon Ball Daima would be an anticipated enough project that it would have a simulcast release, which is something that some animes have done. I would say very successfully, but it hasn't become like an ongoing trend, which really surprises me. Like Kaiju number 8 did it really well, I thought, and then I thought My Hero Academia may have done it for a season at one point. I could be wrong there, but yeah, I just feel like anime has, gotten to the point where it's so popular and enjoyed by so many people that they would, be able to put in the extra work to have them both come out at the same time. But my lack of knowledge on how production in anime on that aspect might be shining through on that, because it might be something that's just not possible the way things are set up. But either way, very exciting. We've got Dragon Ball Daima's first episodes in Japanese to watch in a few weeks. We'll definitely be gabbing about those when those come out, because I'm sure they'll have a lot. Last bit of news before we get into some serious discussions. I am personally a kind of tease a little bit in this. I also play a lot of video games. Big fan of the Devil May Cry series, and we finally got a release date and a trailer for the Netflix anime that's coming out. It's going to be I don't know if it's produced or directed by Adi Shankar. I think I'm saying that correctly. I could be wrong. I apologize if I am. But he previously helped make the Castlevania anime, which I loved. The first series, anyway. I haven't finished Nocturne yet. Nocturne hasn't hit me quite as hard as the first series did, but incredibly thoughtful, well constructed, great animation, great cast, all those good things you hope in an anime, especially an adaptation of such a popular franchise. They did such a good job with the Castlevania series that I think the Devil May Cry series is going to be phenomenal. And also the voice of Dante is, oh boy, I'm spacing on his name right now, and I'm sure one of you guys will be able to help me out with it. But it's the same guy who voiced Nero and Vash and
Johnny Young Bosch, I think.
Johnny Young Bosch, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one. Which is kind of a strange choice, because Johnny Young Bosch plays Nero in the Devil May Cry series, who is a pretty big character. Like, he's kind of the main character in like 2 of the games, and by the 5th game, he really, really did a fantastic job of making that character his own and making him seem a little bit more unique than like Dante and Virgil's and the other cool characters in the series that kick a bunch of ass. So it was kind of surprising to hear that he's voicing Dante in the series rather than the guy who has been voicing Dante in the games very well for decades at this point. But either way, I'm sure it's going to be great. But that's officially coming out in April 2025. Just too far away, with 8 episodes. So we'll be keeping up on that. Hopefully some more news comes out of that. But either of you into Devil May Cry? I'm sure you guys can name a few Johnny Young Bosch performances you're big into, but much anticipation for this?
Yeah, like, I mean, I love a good hack and slash, and Devil May Cry is one of the most premier examples of that, along with more contemporary cases like Bayonetta. With regards to Johnny Young Bosch, I mean, like, yeah, me and my brother, we grew up watching him in numerous things. Like, he's like, first of all, he's voice acting royalty, but he's also like, he's a big fixture in the Power Rangers franchise. He is prominent, within Devil May Cry. He was Vash the Stampede and Trigun, which I think is great to see. Like, sorry, yeah, in even just the new ones, like, that's exciting. He's Ichigo in Bleach. Like, he's so many characters that, like, that sometimes it's easy to forget just how widespread his influence is as like an anime voice actor, but also just like a fixture in the industry. But it's like, with regards to switching over to Dante as opposed to Nero, it's an interesting one because I don't hear his voice for that character. I think Dante's usually a little bit more mature sounding than Nero. But I mean, if anybody could do it, he's got the resume to handle it. I would say he's up for the task.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think he's going to mess it up. But yeah, do you have any thoughts, Josh?
Yeah. Well, with Johnny Young Bosch voicing Nero, that like from what I've read, first off, the reason they didn't get Ruben Langdon back to voice Dante, it's allegedly because he quit acting a little while ago, which is also why he didn't voice Dante in that recent Devil May Cry mobile game. Another reason for
Ah,
that is that apparently there's a specific reason for why Johnny Young Bosch is voicing Dante as opposed to them just casting someone who at least kind of sounds like Dante's old voice. So might not just be because Johnny Young Bosch is a good voice actor, or to be a meta reference to Dante being Nero's uncle. Now there might actually be an in-universe reason for why they sound so similar, which we'd probably just have to watch the show next year to find out.
yeah, and like a lot of adaptations out there, it's a lot of people are curious to see if it's going to be adapting like the story of the games, if it's going to be just taking implements from certain games to create its own story. But I mean, the story of Devil May Cry is like thousands of years long. It's it's got a lot of story to it that didn't exactly flourish in their previous attempt to make a Devil May Cry anime, which came out I think sometime in the 2000s, but that was around the time where I was probably the biggest the height of my Devil May Cry fandom, and one of the game special editions came with the first couple episodes, and it was incredibly disappointing, at least for a teenager of myself to enjoy. I need to go back and see how well it holds up. But I have a lot more trust that this one's going to hit it out of the park more effectively. But we shall find out in April. But yeah, I think that's about all the big news I wanted to talk about today. So I think we'll go ahead and dive into our series discussions. We thought about possibly talking about Chainsaw Man this week, but we've only got so much time and a lot to talk about in both the Boruto, One Piece, and of course Jujutsu Kaisen's ending. But let's go ahead and start with Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, Chapter 14. This chapter picks up pretty much right after the last one, of course, where Boruto got shot from like miles away by Jura. We got some really fascinating details about him in this chapter that kind of blew me away. But we get Boruto being interrogated by Konoha ninjas. Of course, he can't completely reveal all the details because a lot of them are under Ida's ability, which, switched his perspective or switched his place in the world with Kawaki's. So everyone's memories are altered, and it's a pretty trippy Twilight Zone twist that is I'm starting to come around to enjoying it because they're playing around with it pretty well. But yeah, I usually gab about the chapter for a while, but I think I'll change it up a little bit. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on the new chapter, that we can kind of go from there. What are your thoughts on the new Boruto chapter?
All right, yeah. So, I mean, my thing is the last few chapters of Boruto, I would say, got me more excited about the franchise, which was a good thing partially because I write about it, but so it gives me more inspiration to more enthusiastically discuss what happens. But also because I felt like they were introducing big bads and whatnot, but I'm like, where's the end game? Like, what are the stakes we're facing with it? Especially because we want villains that are poised to have similar memorability or even just presence as the Akatsuki or any number of prominent Naruto villains, because Boruto, Naruto Next Generations, we sort of had that with the villainous syndicate, and it's just with code and with the androids and like all these different like terms thrown about. But I'm just like, I never found it to be as engaging as like this high concept existential threat that Jura kind of presents, because it's a with how like they've talked about how these different divine trees are linked to each other, but ultimately with one as sort of like leading the hive mind. That's a good divergence from other villains. It's still a bit tropey compared to like a lot of like popular franchises, but I can appreciate that now. There's subterfuge, like there's like Shikamaru is getting more purpose. You're getting a case of like Boruto's old teammates kind of deciding how loyal they are truly to Kawaki and all these things. It's exciting, and I'm very curious to see how far they go with different divine tree characters as they've been emerging.
Absolutely, JR. And Josh, I totally want to hear your thoughts on it a little bit. I'm just going to go off of what JR was saying. But I really enjoyed the character elements that this chapter kind of added, because I too am incredibly disappointed with a lot of Boruto stuff. Just as a longtime Naruto fan, like I was one of those people who grew up reading it every week, and just how well Kishimoto wrote his villains and how everything just felt, as you said, like an existential threat, because it wasn't just, oh, we're strong bad guys. They were strong bad guys with like really interesting beliefs and thoughts on how the world should operate. And it was all kind of just a really interesting commentary on human interaction and all kinds of mythologies and stuff like that. Just one reason I loved it. And a lot of that just feels lacking in Boruto. A lot of them just seem to be villains that look cool but just don't have the substance like that. And this episode, or this chapter, especially with the reveal that Jura isn't like the spawn of somebody who got taken by the tree and their personality was turned into a divine tree person. He is apparently the 10 tails, just like straight up like reincarnated into this character. Which explains why he like is angry at Naruto and was so interested to find Naruto. If we go back to Naruto's fight with the 10-tailed beast throughout the entire fourth Shinobi War arc, there's a lot of reasons why a 10-tailed beast might not like Naruto. And so just giving that little bit of extra depth. But I think overall Boruto has just been a mess with its villains, especially with the teases of like the Okotsuki and their god, Shibuya, I think is what its name was. It's one of those things, it's the Chekhov gun thing of writing. Like you can't reveal a gun and then not have it play a role in the story. You have to have it go off. Otherwise, why would you reveal it? It's just wasted time and space. But they like revealed that, but then they're doing all these other things that are, trying to fill time to go up to this thing. And it's nice that it feels like the series is finally starting to like move to a point. But I was just overall disappointed with a lot of the things that like get like off screened and don't get the focus, because they seem to have a direction that they're heading to. But I have a whole list of notes I could bring up on this chapter, but definitely want to hear your thoughts on the Boruto chapter, Josh. What'd you think?
I thought it was a pretty good chapter as well. Like honestly, I feel like Boruto, especially Two Blue Vortex, is at its best when it focuses more on just having the characters be characters, as opposed to when it has them fighting and doing a ton of nonsensical lore stuff. I like, as weird as it was, I liked how Boruto never revealed the truth about what Kaoki was doing. That even though would have probably solved a lot of problems. Good way of showing that he still cares about him, and they're not yet at the point we saw them at the very first chapter or episode where they're about to have their duel to the death. And more than that, really hoping that with the the reveal at the end of this chapter, with Gara being attacked and his son being turned into a divine tree, that you finally have an excuse to not have Boruto just come back to the Leaf Village in 2 or 3 chapters, which has kind of been a weird thing to the Vortex has been doing, where he'll just show up, leave, act like he's never coming back, and then just come back a month later. We're really hoping that we that we're done with that now.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and it teases something that I think, and this is something the Naruto series also failed with. I thought was you tease all these other ninja villages, but barely visit them, and especially when you have this sort of global threat like these divine tree people showing up and devouring people, or just the word the manga wants to use, but I don't really think they're devouring them if just a tree forms around them, but I digress. But by teasing that this is also happening in the Sand Village and that Gara's son was taken, and I guess we're to assume he is that new Divine Tree person that was revealed at the very end, who, again, love all the designs. I think these are some of the coolest JoJo villains we've seen in a long time. But Ryu, I think is the character's name. Looks great, but again, this is another thing that the Boruto series is just a big question mark on why they chose to do it this way. I think it's because they want people to watch the anime and the manga, but manga readers don't really have a lot of context for Gaara's son. Like, Gaara's son was kind of a minor antagonist in 1 or 2 of the Boruto anime arcs that did like a whole Chunin exam sort of thing, and he has powers kind of like Gaara's, but they're a little different, and it's really interesting. But again, just the way the anime and the manga has released this, you don't really have this full context unless you've watched both series, which is a headache. But we'll see if he has those sorts of powers. But yeah, I love that we're getting a glimpse into another part of the world. I'm really hoping that we leave Konoha and some of our characters go there, and we get to see how the rest of the world has developed after this time skip.
Hit and missed. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, just like it kind of blows my mind to think that we haven't really seen how else the world has developed other than Konoha, which has gone from being almost like the technology of the 1800s to suddenly we have iPads and internet and Game Boys. Really curious to see how the Sand Village has developed. If it's not just a big crater now.
I mean, like with technology, like to be fair, they've always shown that Naruto was kind of that kind of always had modern technology. Like, that we see people with guns in the Land of Waves arc, and there are a few times where people's homes where you see they have TVs. It's really just that stuff was kind of put on the back burner as the story went on, and it was only really it wasn't really until Boruto where they decided to really put that stuff front and center again.
Which kind of leads into another note. I'll come back to that real quick because I wanted to go on your comment on Kawaki real quick, on how his short-sightedness or this is how I've viewed it. He has extreme short-sightedness when it comes to like Akatsuki and how they're all murderous monsters who need to die, including Boruto. He believes he's one of them. And in this chapter, almost like a page or 2 after he says that, something similar to that, Ida tells him that Boruto is actually trying to help Kawaki keep his standing in Konoha. And just getting to see like that belief instantly shaken, and it shut him up. He's just like, wait, what? Okay. It's nice to see that sort of subtle character development. And I have always thought Kawaki was kind of a poor man Sasuke. They are just, it feels like they're trying to do the Naruto Sasuke bond, but with Boruto and Kawaki, and it just hasn't felt as earned or as emotional as the incredibly well constructed Naruto Sasuke interactions. But this I liked. This was a step in the right direction. I'm really hoping that Kawaki will become a more relatable character as the story goes on, because he has the potential, I think, but it's just been disappointing how he's been introduced, in my opinion, from a hardcore, longtime Naruto fan. But back to the ninja tool, the whole handcuffs that they put Boruto in that apparently cancel out all chakra and are super tough and can't be broken. Those sound like they'd be incredibly handy for a lot of the situations that we've run into, even in this time skip. But we'll probably never likely use or see those again, which just kind of brings up my issue with the ninja tools in the Boruto series in general. Like, there's so many times where they're introduced and we're like, wow, that's an amazing piece of technology that could change the world, but we're only going to use it for this one arc, for this one bit of story. And it's kind of the same thing with the ninja tools that Boruto used in the beginning of the series to kind of to use multiple elements, and he got caught cheating at the Chunin exam for using them, and that was all great. But I mean, these tools could be used by people who are not, that skilled. Kind of like, imagine Rock Lee using ninja tools and being able to do pretty much everything that he has always dreamed of being able to do without his genius of hard work. And it's just another disappointing aspect for me, is that they come up with these awesome ninja tools that could be incredibly helpful for so many situations, but they're very underutilized, in my opinion. But another bit about this chapter that I thought was really cool character development wise was Ino. She was another character that I think has been really shallow through a lot of the series, with a couple highlights. But there was a couple panels where she's like at the hospital looking at her son, who had just been impaled and then healed by Himamari. And you just get to see like some great panels of just her expression go from a concerned parent. And it's a side of the original Naruto characters that I wish we got to see more of, for somebody who grew up with these characters and is now, an older dude who has, a kid of their own and that sort of thing. It's a lot more emotionally resonant it's a lot easier to jump into that perspective of these characters, these older characters now. And that actively changing her attitude towards Shikamaru, and her deciding to not help Shikamaru communicate with Boruto with her powers. That's another bit of like character writing that I think that the series was really lacking before the time skip. So that was really fun to see. Not a fun situation exactly, but it is nice that we're getting these little subtle character development moments that I'm happy to see. It feels like the series is kind of growing to its potential. So that's been great. I've got another couple notes, but was there anything else about the series or about this chapter that you guys had written down that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I was thinking about how leaning into the topic of like original Naruto characters, and even just like with regards to Boruto like offspring characters with the case of Gaara. I think a lot about Metal Lee and how characters like that you don't really see outside of the anime. Even though they're really fun to talk about, and I'm just like, I'd be happy to see more characters like them consumed, either them or their parents, kind of bringing either into the fray in similar ways.
Good idea.
Yeah, like there's so many characters, even just like as I mentioned before, with the village hidden in the mist, or Sunaka Kahore with the sand, the stones, with lightning. It's just like there are so many characters that you can reincorporate using the world building of the divine trees, like gaining sapience, but not wanting to do what Shibai did and become these world conquering gods, because they're too curious about like them like, who am I, comma, the divine tree person. It's fun. I think that there's a positive future for this series with these developments. So like seeing these characters reincorporated into Boruto kind of has a sinister ring to it, because it means any of them could be consumed and be fodder for their family to kind of fight to free them or even to put them down. I think that's great.
Absolutely. There's a lot of potential for it, and it's kind of the potential that I think that the Kishimoto originally wanted to reach with the Fourth Shinobi War by bringing the dead back to life. And that had varying success, depending on who you ask. But absolutely, the storytelling potential there could bring in characters that have been out of the story for a long time and tell new, interesting stories about that. Because we've never had to see, like, Metal Lee is a great example. We haven't seen Ten and Rock Lee like have to fight for something that they care so deeply for in a very long time. That would be fascinating. And again, we talked about getting too excited about possibilities. That I don't want to get too excited, because that's just such a cool idea, and don't know if they'll do it, because the series would almost need to go probably double. It would be a long series if we were to dive into all the storytelling potential that those interactions could have. But Josh, did you have any final thoughts on Boruto Chapter 14?
No, I don't think so. I've said the stuff that was on my mind, and feel like you and JR have said all the other stuff that I've been thinking about. So
Okay. Yeah, no worries, man. Just go over make sure we got everything. Actually, this the thing we were just talking about on how this brings the potential for characters that have been lacking. Konohamaru, had his warning from Boruto saying that one of the divine tree people based on Moegi, the little girl that was following Konohamaru around for so long, she's specifically looking for him, and so that's kind of teasing a Konohamaru fight, which I would love to see. Konohamaru is definitely one of the most underutilized characters, not just in Boruto but in Naruto. He gets like one cool moment against Pain, I would say, with the Rasengan moment. But the games have actually done a better job of utilizing him than the shows have, because of course the games get to do whatever they want with permission, of course. But the whole aspect that he is, the grandson of the third Hokage and related to Asuma, the potential of him being able to use all those moves that those guys used, especially now that he is, an older Kakashi level Jonin. Like, there's a lot of potential there, and I think that we'll definitely be getting that one. This chapter specifically teased that interaction, so we'll see how that comes together. But I think the last bit too I wanted to bring up was the Konoha elders. Those two old people have been just making terrible decisions consistently throughout every time that they show up, and but it kind of reminds me of another aspect that the Naruto series also kind of failed to expand upon, is like the hierarchy of the villages besides the Hokage, or besides the Kages. Like the two old, I forget their names, but the two elders of Konoha teased that Shikamaru's allowing of Boruto to get free is going to have some sort of lasting consequences, because the Daimos are going to be upset by this. We don't know who the Daimos are. They're kind of a term that's been thrown around once or twice, like in the entire franchise. But again, it's like a whole nother aspect that has never really been touched upon or played a big role in the story. So we'll see if anything comes from that. But yeah, I think since 2 Blue Vortex has been coming out, each chapter has made it exciting to be a fan again. And we'll see if we can keep that momentum. But we'll see how the new chapter is when that comes out next month. Oh boy, guys, this time next month we're gonna have Daima and Sparking Zero to play, and new Bleach Thousand Year Blood War episodes. Man, we've
Blue
got
Box.
oh
Sorry.
yeah, and that too, yeah.
So many
Uh,
good series.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're about to be
Yep,
spoiled this
October.
time next month.
Dawn to Dawn. I know Josh is excited for that one, so am I.
Yep.
Hell
It's gonna be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
dude.
I missed the whole news that was coming to theaters for the first couple episodes, so I
Mhm.
would have gone to go see it, but I'm gonna watch that as soon as it becomes available. There's a lot of hype on Dawn to Dawn.
Mhm.
I would
Justified.
say, yeah. Even back when we did the Mega Manga podcast, a lot of the writers we had uh, on to talk recommended it. Use that as the recommendation. So it's been hyped up for me considerably. So we'll be checking it. I'll be checking it out for sure. But moving on to Jujutsu Kaisen chat. The last time we talked about Jujutsu Kaisen, I think we were on 268, where Sukuna had just been freshly defeated. We weren't sure if Yuta was going to be alive. And these last two chapters, chapters 269 and 270, not the last chapters, 271 will be the last chapter. But these last chapters were a lot of just, I feel like, shopkeeping, like letting you know who is still alive. Especially 269 was mostly a lot of the people who were helped with the fight against Sukuna just going over how they think they could have done better. Which is something that I really appreciate about the Jujutsu Kaisen series. Like in most shonen series, like once the bad guy is defeated, everyone's celebrating and the world's a happy place, and yay, the bad guys have lost and the good guys have triumphed. But anytime there's like a big win in Jujutsu Kaisen, it's just like it's a very somber world still. Like it's more just like grieving the dead and wishing that everyone could have done better, and it's a different tone than most other series strive for, especially with we just finished My Hero Academia. Like that's another series that like characters will die in the arc, but we're still gonna go have a sports festival and this and that. And it's kind of refreshing. It just makes everything feel a lot heavier. But Yuta is alive. It was revealed in 269. He went back to his original body, and Rika kept it alive. So that's exciting. A lot of people are big Yuta fans. But yeah, overall, we kind of went with that chapter, bookkeeping of everyone who is still alive with the Sukuna fight, and then the chapter after that, kind of the same thing. We also got some very surprising inclusions on people that might still be kicking, including Kenjaku. It was incredibly like the text bubble was over his face, but it was definitely his hair. My theory is he had such a good time with the comedy guy that he's like, you know what, I was so bored with the world that I wanted to end it with the ultimate amalgamation of cursed spirits. But I met this guy. It's kind of a fun gay relationship in my own head canon. But he's like, I met this guy. He's super fun, and we do comedy together. So I think I'm gonna just not do the world domination thing anymore. Um, so I thought that was kind of a fun aspect. I think lawyer guy is still alive too, which is
Yuruma.
really Yurima. Thank you. I'm just so bad with names, so.
Oh, no worries.
But yeah, I'm kind of just going over a list of things that I liked in the new chapters. But what were your thoughts on the new Jujutsu Kaisen reveals?
Well, I mean, I want to just kind of linger on the Kenjaku thing because I actually just sent in an article about that. I think that you're on the money about like the talk about just having had such a positive impression from Kenjaku. Like, it's interesting because Kenjaku reflected upon the last like several centuries of like this is the best time of my life, basically.
Yeah.
And neither of them really wanted their time together to end, it was so bonkers. Like that entire sequence was fantastic to read. And then just like, and Takaba was like all this time struggling to find a partner for his comedy duo, and it reflects his long time struggle to make friends. And I'm like, okay, first of all, relatable. But it's just like, it's funny because Kenjaku was this like incredibly mendacious, scheming terrorist, and he gets this like happy ending as a comedian. I'm like, it's a little weird, but it's also like, you know what? For them, it's cool because it almost means that he's like subjugated by Takaba, which is very funny to me. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that briefly. And also Higuruma is really cool, so I was relieved that he's alive too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his, and the Sukuna fight really high his coolness to me. Just the whole aspect of like he's only been a sorcerer for a few months and he's already at that level. And plus, just the whole idea of him, being a lawyer and working with that in this crazy world. It's an aspect that Gege like did really well with. But yeah, like Kenjaku being alive, just it's a perfect ending for that. I think like there's so much like mystery, especially with him like being alive for centuries, and it was almost this character who's been plotting and plotting and plotting for world domination, and then this funny weird little guy just came and changed his life, and I'm kind of curious, and this is probably the last bit that I was planning on talking about because it's kind of the cliffhanger, but we'll go ahead and get into it a little bit. But the last chapter 270 that is officially come out teased that there's some other curse user messing with people, but not like in a menacing way. And so Yuji, Megami, and Nobara are pretty much on a nice little mission to figure out who this is and possibly put a stop to it. And Kenjaku seems like the one that would be the perfect one for that. It also kind of feels like with them hiding his face in 270, it's not really that closure, but more of that moments where fans could be like, "Oh my God, that might be him." Oh, and if that's the last we see of him, and it's not him messing with these people, then that could still just be a sly little, thing for fans to ruminate on. But it would be really nice to kind of get a scene of closure, especially because Kenjaku is apparently Yuji's parent. Something that I don't know if that flat out got like revealed or if it was just a fan theory, but there's some chapters that like heavily implied that Yuji's mother was Kenjaku in a female's body, and that never really like paid off. I don't feel like that paid off fully in the series, other than to possibly explain Yuji's natural ability. So I guess what's the last bit of closure that we need? That we need this final curse user to be. I think there's some people holding out hope that Gojo somehow come back to the series. I really don't think it's going to be Gojo. I think people could need to let that go. But what other bits of closure do you think that this story needs that this curse user could possibly bring?
Well, in terms of closure, there's really a lot of stuff that needs to be done with the characters' arcs and the wider world that like Yuji's character, like what's he going to do from here on? What are his friends going to do from here on? How does Jujutsu Society progress after all of this? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that theoretically that theoretically is still that being left unresolved, and I don't think that whatever happens to this curse user is going to contribute to that in any significant way, if I can be honest. With the way things have been going, it's honestly it look like Jujutsu Kaisen is going to end on a bit of an anticlimactic note, like one of those stories where it just kind of tries to wrap everything up as quickly as possible before or ending on a note of and the adventure continues, so on and so forth, something like that. Like while I'm here, like I want to backtrack a bit to talk about chapter 269. That and just to comment about how really funny that chapter was intentionally, because if you spend some amount of time online on social media, uh, like basically everything that the characters were talking about in that chapter, all the stuff that they could have done differently, all the alternative ways that they could have handled Sukuna, like almost everything they brought up there is stuff people have been talking about ever since the fight started a year ago. Like honestly feels like they want to use one of the last chapters to like pick a fight with redditors.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that chapter was like being in a Reddit thread where they're just like, oh well, he did this. Well, no, not actually. Like it was just that constantly. Yuji trying to talk people up, and then everyone being like, well, no, actually, that was a failure. Like it was pretty fun. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up because yeah, I think it's really interesting and that a series can kind of point fun at itself almost in that aspect. And Jujutsu Kaisen's written all these characters that have gotten to the point where they can say that sort of stuff and it doesn't feel like it is a meta commentary. All these characters are that sort of harsh not the kindest people in the world who are willing to point fingers and express regret for their actions. And again, it's just earlier what I was saying too. Like we won. Like the world was saved, and any other series they'd be celebrating and have that sort of triumph. And Jujutsu Kaisen just doesn't really feel like they've ever have that moment of triumph. So it's definitely different, but I would argue that I think that the series has, especially in I think it was 270, we got like a panel or a couple panels of one of the girls that was like bullied in Yuji's class. One of the bullies was like trying to apologize to her, and she just kind of ran away. It reminded me a lot of the My Hero Academia ending, where the new possible scary, even scarier villain who'd been locked in a basement by their abusive family had crept out, and the old lady who saw a young Shigaraki needing help and being like, oh, I'm not going to deal with that weird looking kid. Somebody else can do it. And then she, lent the help out. And that was kind of Horikoshi's way of insinuating that society has started to shift in a more positive direction and wanting to help each other out. And that's kind of how I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen did with that moment too. Obviously a little bit different, but that was definitely the same vibe, the same message. I think that Horikoshi did with My Hero, that Gege did here with Jujutsu Kaisen. And I don't know if we'll get more than that, but I think that that was a nice, clever little nod that society is improving to a point where, with Jujutsu Kaisen's lore, the malice and the hate that people have towards each other and stress and situations and stuff like that gave birth to these curse spirits. So I feel like that was a little tease that, if we keep moving in this direction, curse spirits will no longer be a thing. So I thought that was kind of cool. Let's see. I've got a few more notes here on it, but yeah. Any other thoughts on that you guys wanted to bring up on Jujutsu Kaisen, or let's see which one I want to end it on before we start talking about One Piece?
I think I said everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I mostly wanted to talk about Kenjaku, so I said my piece.
yeah. The Kenjaku thing is fascinating, and I'm anxious to hear what you wrote about it, because I think breaking down his entire character and how his ending is so appropriate, that could be a full feature if no one else has pitched that. I might do that. Oh, I guess one other thing about this chapter that I thought was a little interesting too was how through Maki, her kind of explaining that I guess the culling game is still kind of going on, but it's just not really relevant anymore. Um, so it seems like some of the sorcerers that were like brought back from the dead are still alive, including the sumo guy. And so I thought that was a cool little scene where Maki is saying like, kind of need you guys to hang out in this space that's been reserved for cursed spirits, I guess. Um, I don't know, somebody who knows the mechanics of Jujutsu Kaisen's power dynamics and stuff more effectively than I could probably explain it better. But it seems like all the cursed spirits are only allowed in a certain place in Japan now. And again, I'm not sure how or who is controlling that aspect. Um, but Maki was saying that these sorcerers who are still alive should hide out in there, and so that is kind of a nice little ending for those two characters that we barely got to know in a couple chapters of the calling game arc. Um, but I don't know. It kind of also leaves the door open for the editors teasing, more content is coming after the series ends. Again, we don't know if that's a whole nother series, a one shot, or a movie, or it could be a popularity poll, as we were talking about. But there are little bits that are still kind of unresolved that could lead into a bigger conflict later on if they decide to keep the story going. And this calling game tease, I think, is one of them. So we'll see what happens. As a kind of tease, we'll definitely be talking about the last chapter, and like we did with the My Hero Academia ending, we'll be talking about the whole series as a whole, probably on our next episode. So look forward to that. But I think that's the last bit of Jujutsu Kaisen we had to talk about. I think we'll go ahead and move into some One Piece. And this week we're going to be talking about chapter 1127. And it looks like we've got our other guest in to talk about One Piece. We've got the fantastic Merlyn De Souza, who's been on the series, who's been on our podcast a couple times before. But she's another excellent screenwriter who specializes in a lot of One Piece and a lot of other great series. But how is your day going today, Merlyn?
Hello, it's going good. I'm excited to talk about some One Piece.
Yeah, what a chapter! Like I think the last chapter or two they were saying it's the beginning of the new Elbaf arc, but this one threw us right into it. There's only been a couple arcs that have started pretty heavy into the adventure already. Most times the Straw Hats get to the island, they jump on, they meet a couple people, they eat, they see somebody being a bully, and they accidentally topple an entire government that's been ruling for decades. Typical One Piece stuff. But this one started, just immediately right into like we're on Elbaf. We start with Nami and Usopp, who are quote unquote the weakest Straw Hats. So I mean, if you started with Luffy, Sanji, or Zoro, there just wouldn't be much tension. They've become like some of the strongest characters in the entire world, and there's not a lot that could, make that feel scary. Like, there's not a lot of situations where you're like, oh, I hope they are going to be able to get out of this. So Oda did a fantastic job, I think, of creating a situation with that tension by having it focus on Nami and Usopp. But Merlyn, I know usually a lot of these podcasts, it's me gabbing about the chapter for a while and then other people kind of chiming in. We'll switch it up a little bit, and I would love to hear your rant or your thoughts on the chapter as a whole.
Yeah, I think it was all right. I remember when the scans first came out, I was just so confused. Like, what is happening here? Is she really in a go house or? And then people started, noticing all the little inconsistencies. So
Mm.
I'm still not sure whether this is reality or they're all like hallucinating because of the green fairy absent. Um, but yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There's already like a lot of there's a lot of things that we can unpack, I think, about Elbaf, and I actually want to start with the title of the chapter. It's Adventure in the Land of Mystery. That was just so intriguing to me. What do you think about that?
Well, thankfully, some other more astute One Piece fans than myself, who make great YouTube videos, have pointed out that there's been a few other arcs that have started with a similar title, like Adventure in blah blah blah. I can't think of
Mm-hmm.
the thing. And in those chapters, it's always been the Straw Hats jumping immediately into, pretty much the drama of the arc and starting off immediately. I think Alabasta was one of those situations where that arc started with a similar title. But the title Adventure, you said it's the official title of the chapter is Adventure on the Island of Mystery. Is that what it
Yep,
is?
in the Land of Mystery.
The Land of Mystery. Okay. Yeah, I've been seeing, and it's something that I didn't quite first reading either, but a lot of people are thinking that this is all an illusion. There's a few little art mistakes and a few little things here and there, like Luffy's weapon disappearing between frames and him saying the wrong attack name. Just little things that super
That
nerds
it
seem
just
to
has to be
realize.
original because yeah,
Yeah,
Oda usually doesn't make these kinds of these kinds of mistakes and these many inconsistencies in the span of just a couple of pages. It has to be intentional.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a great idea. That could all be a hallucination, especially with just the rules of writing and storytelling. If you're going to bring something up more than once, then there's usually there's a reason for that. And they've brought up that this drink that they were enjoying on the ship could cause hallucination, once or twice. So there's a theory that one of the monster trio members that showed up might not actually be them. One of them seems to think it could be Luffy, who is actually Loki, who is supposedly, I think, the king of the giants, who had been brought up in the past. I think Big Mom wanted to
Mm-hmm.
marry one of her children to him so that she could form an alliance with the
Yeah,
giants.
she wanted, I think it was Lola,
Yeah.
either Lola or Lola's sister to marry that guy. Yeah, I think he's a prince, and yeah, an interesting theory I've seen about Loki is that he might actually be the giant cat that attacks the group in the chapter, the cat
Oh.
that turns into a lion wearing a crown. Because
So you
yeah.
think they started this arc by beating up the prince of the giants? That would be
It's not
wildly appropriate.
completely impossible for One Piece, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it's actually a story that probably won't be up by the time this episode comes out. But the next one I'm going to be writing about is how the chapter begins with the giants talking about how there's some strange earthquake and there's a fire going on in the forest, and they say it was the giant ear god, which is apparently a titanic rabbit. And this is giants saying this. So when giants are saying something is big, it's probably pretty big. But apparently, this chapter insinuates that Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro killed the ear god and ate it. We still don't know enough about giant society to know, do they just call things gods because it's maybe the biggest rabbit on the island, and so they call it a god? Do they actually give tribute and pray and praise this as a god, or is it just the strongest one? The term god is so loosely used, I think, in One Piece. It could mean all kinds of things, but there's several things in this chapter that the Straw Hats are not doing a great job of integrating into this society. There's so many things that they did in this one chapter already that could possibly start a war with this society. But again, it just kind of all adds to the mystery, this adventure on the island of mystery. Because the last we were with them, we were with Dory and Bragi, we were with Bonnie and Kuma. In this chapter, they're nowhere to be found, as well as most of the Straw Hat crew, which was another nice thing too. Kind of quick sidetrack. That this chapter was the original East Blue Straw Hats. It was really, really cool to see just the first 5 Straw Hats like in this adventure together. If it really is the Straw Hats.
Yeah, because I think they were the first ones. They were the ones to meet the giants originally on Little Garden before the rest joined.
Yeah, I mean the only one that's not there was Vivi now, but yeah, I mean this was even before Chopper. So this was just kind of a nice little adventure, especially for people who have been enjoying the series for years, and for people who didn't just recently experience the East Blue arc. This was a nice, comfy blanket to just be hanging out with these Straw Hats. Excuse me. But I don't know. The whole Lego thing also kind of throws things off. My first thought before the hallucination thing and that this could all be fake really started to feel a lot more prominent was just I thought that possibly Nami and Usopp were just dumped into this castle, and these are like the pets of royalty. Like this is possibly Loki's cat, and it's just all a big misunderstanding. Like they just meant to play. Cats obviously play a little rougher than other things, so it decided to chew on Usopp, and he just totally overreacted. But yeah, I don't know. The thing that really threw me off too, other than notice the art mistakes until people online pointed them out, but the thing that really threw me off to be like, that this seems a little weird, was Luffy saying something along the lines of,
That he's full and he doesn't want to eat yet.
yes, yeah, that's the one. That was the thing that
Luffy
really
would
threw
never
me
say
off.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And also the whole like his straw hat isn't prominent. Like I could imagine it being under the helmet he's wearing or under his big black cape, but again, it's just there's so many things that we're nitpicking here because this chapter just presented so many. Like, and that's very rare. If it was just one or two things, it would probably fly under the radar. But this is definitely an adventure on an island of mystery. But one thing I did love, and it's kind of a reason I hope that this isn't a hallucination, is the outfits. I love the outfits. I besides Nami's, I think, of course, Nami's is always going to be revealing a lot of skin and all of this. And I don't know, it can be creative and cool and stuff, but it just not really my cup of tea, I guess. Just to have ultra revealing outfits. But I
They
really
remind me
enjoy.
a lot of the Onigashima outfits, and
Yeah,
especially with the fur and Zoro's outfit in particular. He looks like he's straight out of the Beast Pirates.
yeah, absolutely. And Asanji's definitely looks a little bit more like a knight, which totally lends into his white knight aesthetic. Um, I do like Luffy's horn helmet and all that stuff, and of course I never say no to Usopp with a beard. Um, but I'm just incredibly excited to see the rest of the Straw Hat outfits, especially Brooke. Like, even though Brooke doesn't always have stuff to do in an arc, Oda always gives him just really outrageous outfits because, I mean, it's a skeleton. You can do pretty much anything you want with that. So that's fun. That's another fun aspect I'm really hoping we get. Another thing I saw some people on YouTube bring up too was this attack that Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro did on this lion. Is apparently a direct reference to like the combo attack that they did against the lizard in Alabasta, which was something I didn't realize either too. But apparently that's another thing Oda kind of mirrored with this chapter. So there's a lot of parallels to past arcs, and There's just a lot of things kind of leading up to, this could all be fake, but then what would that mean? Is it only kind of fake? Is just one of these people an imposter? We don't know. But that's kind of another thing too, is if one of these people is an imposter, leading up to imposters, they bring up that the giants bring up that because there was some sort of crime, we should report this to the sun god. And so, as we know, Luffy is technically the reincarnation of the sun god Nika. So I would wonder if this Luffy is a fake, and the real Luffy has been taken to this sun god. Because I can just picture if this character who is a sun god might be sort of dressed like Nika, and then Luffy sees them and is just like, "Oh, hey, I can do that too." And then he turns into Gear 5, and then everyone just loses their minds, like, "Oh my god, we've been waiting centuries for you. You're Nika." And he's just like, "No, I'm Luffy." Like, I don't know. I am very anxious to see Luffy's persona as Nika. I'm anxious to see how the Giants react to him, especially if Dory and Bragi, come in and help explain what's going on, because that's all radically missing right now. We need those envoys to help bridge this this barrier that the Straw Hats are reaching here. But it's also like, might the Straw Hats cause so much damage that Dory and Bragi won't be able to fix it? If this takes too long, if this is all really happening. So much. there's a lot, but any other thoughts on this chapter, Marilyn?
Well, there is one particular theory that I'm putting together. I don't know if we're running over time right now for me to bring it up right now. What I want to bring up is the tree, the Yggdrasil tree that appears in this chapter. It looks pretty small, as I've seen people bring up. Because whenever we've seen Elbaf in the past, the tree looks massive, and it just looks so tiny whenever it's seen in this chapter here. And there's this one theory that I saw about it, which was that that what we've seen of Elbaf so far is just the shore, and that is why the trunk of the tree looks so huge. But the place where the Straw Hats are at the moment are perhaps higher up on the tree. That is why it looks so small, and that Elbaf might actually have different countries within it, or different different parts of it, kind of like maybe like Wano, based on the Norse mythology of the tree. And yeah.
No,
So
absolutely. That's a great point.
So what I think is maybe the place that they are at right now is Midgard, the place that's supposed to be Earth pretty much in Norse mythology. And maybe that's why it looks pretty normal with the Lego houses and stuff. And okay, I need you to put on your tinfoil hat right now and let me cook.
Okay, I've got it ready.
Okay.
All right, it's on.
They mentioned reporting to the sun god. Okay. So now the upper levels of the tree of Yggdrasil, two of those areas are Muspelheim and Vanaheim. Now Muspelheim is like is the world of fire and flames. So perhaps that's the region ruled by the sun god that they mention. And Vanaheim is supposed to be, the world of fertility. And in Norse mythology, rabbits and hares represent fertility and, that sort of thing. And maybe that's the area ruled by the year god that Luffy and Zoro and stuff like defeated.
Okay.
You see where I'm going with this.
Absolutely. That would make so much sense. I mean, especially with how Oda introduced Wano with all the different provinces, and how everything with the giants has been teased as, representing Norse mythology. And as somebody who's played the most recent God of War games, I know some of these words.
Yeah,
But
that would be so interesting. That would mean that they just have Elbaf is just so huge, and they'll probably spend like so long exploring it. There's just so much to explore if it has like 9 different regions like that.
yeah, that would make so much sense too. I mean, especially because Oda wants to wrap this show up. Like, if we were to land on Elbaf and take all the time to climb the tree, and oh boy, it just makes me think of Zoe and the everyone's favorite crappily drawn dragon, Ryunosuke, and his bravery of climbing them all on top of the elephant. We could have had the same thing with the tree, because anytime that Elbath has been teased and they kind of just show like a silhouette of the island, the tree is the biggest thing you can imagine. Like, and as you pointed out, the tree in this is definitely not that. So it would be very interesting if they're on top of the giant tree, and they have all of these different lands kind of above the tree that's holding up all of these areas and stuff. So that could be crazy, or that could be really, that could lead to a lot of exciting plot devices. I mean, especially if this is where the final war could take place, which is a theory I've had anytime that anime has teased, especially in newer episodes, what Elbath looks like. It's just this huge, beautiful landscape that is just forests and giant lakes everywhere. It kind of was making me fear, like, oh, isn't this place beautiful and huge? Wouldn't it be a shame if there's some giant war here to mess it all up?
Yeah, boom, Ragnarok.
Yeah. I mean, Oda probably wouldn't introduce like a whole Viking mythology thing and not have Ragnarok play some sort of role into it. It's just how it's going to connect to the overarching plot with the world government and Laugh Tale has yet to be seen. But this chapter was just instead of having a few chapters leading into this environment and teaching people how society works in this new land and all that, we're just thrust right into it, and it all still works. But maybe that's why some inconsistencies were there, because there's just so much to do in this one chapter that he's like, oh crap, I accidentally gave Luffy a sword and a stick in another panel. That's on the same freaking page, by the way. Another inconsistency that people brought up was Luffy's sitting on top of this beat up cat, and he has a sword sticking out from behind his back. And then literally the panel right below that, it's actually a stick with him smiling and his eyes closed. Apparently, Luffy also doesn't show his eyes in this entire chapter. They're either obscured or closed. So that's kind of another credence too that Luffy could be an imposter. But yeah, I love the idea that there's different provinces that each have their own god, and the Straw Hats have already killed one of them because they needed food. Just incredibly excited to see what's going to happen in this next chapter. How long this facade could be going, if there is a facade. But
How long
yeah.
do you see Elbaf running? Maybe like how many chapters, how many months?
Oh boy, honestly, I think it's too early to tell. Like, I don't know if it's going to be another Wano length arc, but I could see it being longer than Egghead. I don't know. Time is so
Like
weird
it
right
was
now. Like,
an entire year long, I think, but it just flew by so quickly.
yeah, I was just about to say, like, I feel like I still feel the excitement of Gear 5 Luffy. Like, I still feel like that was very recent. And then you look at the calendar and the releases, and you're like, that was like almost 2 years ago, if maybe even longer than that at this point. So I don't know, just the pacing that Oda has been throwing the amount of information and progress in each chapter has just made it wild to experience as a caught up One Piece fan. So yeah, I think it's way too early to tell how long Elbath could be. But I feel like in the past, Oda said that this final saga is going to be 3 arcs. Egghead was the first arc of this final 3, apparently. So either Elbath is going to be huge, and then the final arc's not going to be that huge, or vice versa. I think it of course could be both of them are going to be huge arcs. I don't know. There's just so much to wrap up, and this chapter did a really good job of just building out this new location without teasing anything else from the other plot lines everyone's waiting for. That I feel like we could just stay on Elbath and focus on Elbath for a while. And we'll see if other elements from the world come to Elbath and interfere with it. Or if
I
we're going to
just
focus on this.
realized. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just realized that we didn't get an establishing shot of Elbaf, because Oda usually does that whenever we're entering a new arc, that he'll give us like a nice double page spread, like establishing shot of the island, and we haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like a big title card drop of Elbath, home of the Giants, or something like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, I don't know. The evidence is stacking up that this is a big old phony. And that's kind of another thing too. I mean, One Piece gotten into it's written itself into a position where they could all still be on the boat, and they just all drank this thing, and they're all having some sort of weird dream together because somebody on the boat has a devil fruit that allows them to have weird dreams. And surprise, it's Yuta. She's still alive, and her dream powers are doing this now. The One Piece film Red people know what I'm talking. But yeah, we'll definitely be talking about it when we find out more. Hopefully, I don't know if we're on break next week. I don't. Shonen Jump website says we are not, but I think FanSubs said we are. But we'll definitely be talking about more once more comes out. Any final thoughts on the chapter before we move into plugs and recommendations and wrap things up?
Not really. I think we discussed all that there is to discuss about One Piece today.
Absolutely. Well, no, I think we could probably find more to talk about if we really want to. But yeah, I think I'm satisfied with this chat today. Yeah, just I've always found the way that Oda implements well-known mythologies into the world of One Piece has been fascinating. And it's as a huge fan, it's a rare time where we're at the beginning of one, and just the excitement on how he's going to play with all of those mythology legends and implement it. It's very exciting. So thanks for your chat. Thanks for your insight and contribution for this today. But I think we'll go ahead and wrap up our episode of Big Anime Talkies. I, again, am Jason Hon, host of the podcast. And thanks for listening if you made it this far. Please like, comment, subscribe, however you're enjoying this. Also, want to hear your thoughts on either Boruto, Jujutsu Kaisen, or One Piece. If there's anything that you think we missed or want us to talk about, please let us know. Would also want to hear your favorite moments from the manga, or possibly your theories on any of the series that we talked about today. Please let us know in the comments. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and go into plugs and recommendations. As I said, a lot of us are writers for Screen Rant, so check out our content on there. Merlyn, did you have any recommendations or articles that you've written recently that you'd like people to check out?
Oh, I have been reading Solo Leveling's sequel, Ragnarok, and I would recommend that everybody check that out. It only has about 20 fan sub chapters out so far, but it's pretty good. It's exciting.
Oh, good. I didn't know that was like a sequel or needed a sequel. I haven't watched the anime yet. I know I'm terrible. A lot of people have recommended it to me. Um, but did the first series like tell a full complete story and then there's a sequel series, or does the first part of the anime still have a lot to tell in its first part?
Oh, so yeah, so the first season that's out so far tells about like 1/4 of the manhwa, around, yeah,
Oh, okay.
about a fourth of it, not even like halfway through the first season of the webtoon. And yeah, the manhwa's been complete for a while, and the sequel actually follows Jinwoo's son. His name is Sang
Ah,
Suho. I don't want to spoil who his mother is for any anime onlys. I don't want to spoil who Jinwoo ends up with.
oh, thank you.
But yeah.
Gotcha.
Awesome.
I gotcha. Sorry, I misspoke.
No, absolutely, man. And Marilyn, real quick, what's the name of the sequel series again?
It's called Solo Leveling Ragnarok.
Oh, okay. So it's just the colon Ragnarok.
Yep.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, if you've enjoyed that, catch up on the manga, and then you can enjoy the sequel series. Um, but yeah, and any articles that you've written that you're particularly proud of, you would like to put people's attention to?
Not that I can think of anyone right now, but yeah, I think I'll be putting out that theory about Elbaf being like, like the tree of Yggdrasil with the different provinces. I think I'll put out that theory in the days to come. So keep an
Absolutely.
eye out for that one.
yeah, yeah. Please check out Marilyn's work on Screen Rant, especially when that article comes out, because there's just so much about Viking mythology and Norse mythology that Oda could pull from, and her coverage on that should be pretty eye-opening with some of the things that we could be expecting. Um, but how about you, JR, man? Any plugs or recommendations?
Yeah, so lately I've been getting into coverage on various 90s franchises that a lot of video game tie-ins. So lately I got to do Monster Rancher and Metabots pretty close to back to back. And it's just a fun little nostalgia trip that I got to dive into, discussing like their various influences, the games that they kind of plugged as a result. On top of those, I got to do a really fun fan theory piece on Chainsaw Man, about the Statue of Liberty moment. And then there was, let's see, I'll give you a little glimpse of like the future pieces that I kind of nabbed earlier. It's just like a couple pieces of Toonami and Adult Swim history with hopefully some upcoming pieces on IGPX, Immortal Grand Prix, and Space Dandy.
Oh man, Space Dandy was one of those shows that left a huge impression when that dropped.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those like really crazy idiosyncratic series from like Watanabe that just were like did not disappoint. And I actually got to interview one of the composers who worked on the music for that a few weeks ago, which was really great.
Oh, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
if any of those spark your interest, please check out JR's work on Screen Rant. Lots of great writings there. And Josh, how about you, man? Any plugs or recommendations, stuff you've been enjoying lately, or things you want to point people towards?
Yeah. Well, for first of all, for plugs like with articles I've written, like I said before, I wrote the article we just published today about Dragon Ball Daim's English dub and Stephanie Nadolny coming back to voice Goku. So I recommend that. I also just did an update on the top 10 best-selling manga of 2024, and that's been updated to the top 15. There are 5 new entries. Ones that are added there probably won't be all too surprising, but it was still pretty fun to write. So recommend people check that out when the update goes live later today. I think it's supposed to go up at 8 tonight. No, don't perfectly remember off the top of my head. And as for story recommendations, I'd really like to recommend this new manga that started on Manga Plus a few weeks ago called The Hero Organization. It's this sci-fi series about uh, about these takes place in the far future where Earth uses these giant mechs to battle these alien creatures called star beasts who keep trying to attack the planet and the various space colonies they have around the galaxy. It starts off with this middle-aged guy who joins the army so he can look cool in front of his son. I'm not going to spoil what happens from there because oh man, chapter 2 was just something else. But it's really cool. The art is amazing. So is the writing. It's full of great twists at every turn. It's basically the sci-fi equivalent to Kaiju number 8. If you like Kaiju number 8, or if you're a longtime manga reader who's been kind of burnt out on it, which I know a lot of people have, then you're probably gonna like hero organizations, so you should give it a read.
Excellent. Well, great recommendations, man. And again, thank you everybody. Before a final send off, I'll give a couple of my own recommendations. Another great new manga series that is actually on Shonen Jump. I need to read the latest chapter on it, but Ichi the Witch. I read the first chapter of that and really enjoyed it. Like, the art's really cool. The whole premise is like some orphan boy grew up in the woods and became like a perfect hunter, essentially, because he had to. And then you find out that there's these like the world is filled with witches and people who can do huge, amazing magical abilities, but apparently only women are able to use them, and there's like a small 0.000.1 chance that a male could be born with the ability to use magic, but but anytime that has happened, they've like quickly died because they couldn't control it or something like that. And first chapter it does a great job of introducing the world, and the art's really cool, and the character's likable. And it's only got a couple chapters out so far, but so far it's got a great start. And with Shonen Jump having a terrible history of canceling a lot of projects before they had the chance to bear their wings, I recommend reading new series so then we can hopefully, have some of them grow into the next big great thing. But so far, Ichi the Witch has been really cool. And as far as things I've written, as I said earlier, I did an awesome preview. I had an amazing time previewing the new Dragon Ball Sparking Zero game. I got a hands-on time with it and played it for a couple hours. And without spoiling too much, it is everything Dragon Ball Tenkaichi fans hope it is. Look forward to that. But as far as anime manga stuff goes, a couple weeks ago I had Naruto is my favorite anime, but even I'll admit it hasn't aged well and needs a remake. Going back and rewatching old school Naruto anime with my son has been awesome and fun. Also, a little revealing to show that those nostalgia glasses are real. You go back and wow, that some of that pacing is horrific, and there's so many like. Of course, Naruto has its filler episodes, but even in canon episodes, there's a lot of filler content that is, made because it was a weekly release show and they've got to fill that time slot. And I think a remake could really, really benefit that series, and it would be a treat to see some new stuff of that. But I get a little bit more into that in my article there, so please check out my stuff on Screen Rant as well. But that'll be this episode of Big Anime Talkies. Again, thanks for listening and everyone for their time today. I look forward to the next one, and we'll see you then.